have agreed. I'd like to call the meeting of April 5th meeting of the Little Rock Planning Commission to order. First, we'll have the roll call.
Chairman Latour.
Here.
Vice Chair Berry.
Here.
Commissioner Bynum.
Here.
Commissioner Cox.
Here.
Commissioner Finney.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Haynes.
Here.
Commissioner Leahy. Here. Commissioner May.
Here.
Commissioner Stebbins.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
You have all members present. You do have a quorum.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move for approval of the minutes of the February 22nd, 2019 meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Or left hand, as the case may be. That's approved. Presentation of the consent agenda.
Little Rock Planning Commission, April 5th, consent agenda. Items for consent deferral, item 3, file number Z-1870-B, King Ridge Enterprises Revised Short Form PDC, located at 2501 South Broadway Street. And item 4, file number Z-4324-A, Ace General Contractors, long form PID, located at 11201 Stagecoach Road. Both applicants failed to respond to comments raised at the March 14, 2018 Subdivision Committee meeting. Staff recommends deferral of these items to the May 17, 2018 public hearing. Item number 12, file number LA-0079, Carti Land Alteration Variance Request, located between Carti Way and I-630. On March 26, 2018, the applicant requested a deferral of this item to the May 17, 2018 public hearing. Staff is supportive of the deferral request. Items for consent approval. Item A, file number S-1805, Little Rock Tours Subdivision Site Plan Review, located at 3100 Interstate 30. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from section 36-319 to allow a 15-foot rear yard setback for the construction of an awning covering the proposed drive on the rear of the building. Item number C, file number S-1806, Jose Bartolome's preliminary final plat located at 14502 Alexander Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request to allow the creation of Lot 1 as a lot without public street frontage. Item number 2, file number S-1810, CES Development Subdivision Site Plan Review, located at 1701 East 22nd Street. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from section 30-43 and 31-210 to allow the drive less than 125 feet from the side property line and 250 feet from the other drive or the street intersection, and to allow the driveway width to exceed 36 feet. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from section 36-522 to allow the elimination of the street buffer, and the applicant has revised their site plan to address staff's concerns related to the depth of the drive. Item number 5, file number Z-5718-C, West Tree Service, revised short form PDI, located at 6300 Forbing Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends the applicant provide the required screening along the eastern perimeter of the site where adjacent to residentially zoned and/or used property. Item number 8, file number Z-9304, Central Acquisitions LLC, short form PDC, located at 12620 Lawson Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. The applicant must request and be approved an annexation to the city prior to the development of the site. Based on the city's current policies, all properties must be inside the corporate limits of the city to receive sewer service. Item number 9, file number Z-9305, Meyer Longform PDC, located at 10 Rusty Tractor Lane. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. And item number 10, file number Z-7607-B, Lot A, Chateaus on Stagecoach, revised PCD, located on the northwest corner of Chateaus Lane and Stagecoach Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends the plantings located along the western perimeter be installed at a minimum of 1 1/2 times the typical ordinance requirement for the placement of trees and shrubs within the buffer area, and the minimum of 50% are to be evergreen trees and shrubs. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Yes, did anyone want to recuse? Okay. I move for approval of the consent agenda as read by staff with all staff recommendations.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda, hold up whichever hand's applicable to you. Anybody opposed? Consent agenda is passed. If your item was on those that we just called, you're free to go. Congratulations. Remember, now we're the regular agenda items that will require discussion. Again, I remind you have 20 minutes, which will be timed up there. Each side has 20 minutes. Pardon me, we'll start with item B.
Item B, file number Z-9284, Sticks Bar and Grill, short form PCD, located at 3910 Asher Avenue. The request is to rezone the site from C3 General Commercial District to PCD Planned Commercial Development District to allow the use of the property as a private club and event center. The applicant proposes live music bands and groups as well as comedy and karaoke. There will also be pool tables located on the site. The use of the property does include ticketed events. The hours of operation proposed from 11 a.m. to midnight Monday through Thursday and from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday. Hours of dumpster service will be limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The building contains 4,200 square feet of floor area. Parking for an event center is typically based on one parking space per 100 gross square feet of floor area. Based on the square footage of the building, 42 spaces would typically be required. The site plan submitted indicates 31 parking spaces. The applicant has not included the proposed signage plan. The building has frontage on Asher and also South Pine. Staff recommends building signage be limited to signs which have direct public street frontage and also limited to a maximum of 10% of the facade area abutting the street. Any ground sign be limited to a maximum of 36 feet in height and 160 square feet in area. Staff is not supportive of the applicant's request. The site plan, as indicated, does not include adequate parking to serve the proposed use. In addition, portions of the parking will be located within the right-of-way once the right-of-way dedication is complete. The applicant indicates food service will be provided via a mobile canteen service. If this is the case, then parking spaces will be lost to allow mobile canteen to set up. The plan does not include any upgrades to the existing landscaping located on the site. The site is currently and will continue to be solely pavement and buildings. Staff feels the use of the building as an event center and private club is too intense for this site, and staff recommends denial.
Okay, is there anybody from a proponent that would like to speak on it? If so, come on up.
The applicant. The applicant. The applicant.
The applicant.
Hello.
State your name
Oh,
if you would.
my name is Tamara Cooney. Far as the parking spaces go, I talked to the owner, the church, the Pastor Brumfield, and we're meeting not next week, but the following week, because he's doing a convention all next week, so that we can set up arrangements for us to use that land for parking over there, so that we will have the amount of parking spaces that is needed.
Are you amending your application to that? Because that is not an agreement that was part of your application, and you're going, and, you know, at this point in time, you would need to request a deferral. That's not in front of the board right now, or the commission, for a decision.
Okay. I guess I need to do a deferral then. Is that all?
Yes. So you're asking to defer until you get that agreement with the extra parking?
Yes.
And, okay, what date would that be? Yes. May 17th?
And I want the applicant to be clear, even though you get that agreement with the property owner and you come back before the planning commission, that does not ensure that you get a positive vote. It just means that you have something to bring before the planning commission that addresses the parking situation.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I had one other thing. We were not trying to do a nightclub. We're just trying to do an event center. We changed it to an event center.
So you need to include that in your, for the hearing next time too. So
Okay.
talk with Donna for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll make a motion to defer item B to the May 17th, did you say? Hearing?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded, we defer this item to May 17th. Any discussion? Hearing none, if you favor this, please raise your hand. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Item 1.
Okay, item 1, file number S-1809, breeding addition preliminary plat, located at 7718 Henderson Road. The request is to subdivide this 4.97 acre parcel into 3 lots and allow the future development of 2 additional homes on the site. There's an existing home located on Lot 3. There are variances associated with the request with regard to the lot depth to width ratio and the creation of a pipe stem lot. Lot 3 is indicated with the depth to width ratio and variance, and Lot 2 is indicated as a pipe stem lot. Section 31-232 of the subdivision ordinance states pipe stem lots shall be prohibited in residential subdivision, but the ordinance further defines the criteria for creating a pipe stem lot. Lot 2 will be provide access via a 30-foot pipe stem, which includes a utility easement extending from Henderson Road. The minimum width of the stem at the street right-of-way is to be 30 feet, the maximum depth 300 feet, and the minimum lot area 10,000 square feet. With the creation of the pipe stem, the width at the street is adequate, but the depth of the pipe stem lot exceeds the 300-foot typical maximum depth. The request also includes the variance to allow the increased lot-to-depth ratio for Lot 3. The ordinance states no residential lot shall be more than 3 times as deep as it is wide, and the lot is 740 feet deep, with the width being 200 feet. Section 31-400 states for all residential lots or development tracts not served by public or community sanitary sewer systems whose disposal is approved by the State Department of Pollution Control and Ecology, or the subdivider shall submit documentation with the submission of the preliminary plat that states the Department of Health will approve septic tank installation on the individual lots. The applicant has provided test pits, or has noted that test pits have been dug and evaluated, and the soils are suitable for a subsurface septic system on Lot 1. At the time a new home is proposed for Lot 1, the applicant will seek approval from the Arkansas Department of Health for the installation of this septic tank. The applicant has indicated that a subsurface sewage disposal system has been approved for Lot 2 by the Department of Health, and Lot 3 has an existing residence. Also, per the ordinance, Section 31-400, the subdivider is to either install or include in the bill of assurance a note with regard to the septic tank installation. The applicant has indicated that the statement will be included in the bill of assurance. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request. The applicant is seeking approval to allow the creation of 3 lots, which will allow the placement of 2 additional homes on the property. The lots are indicated with adequate area to allow septic systems to serve the new homes. Although there are variances associated with the request, staff does not feel the creation of the pipe stem lot and or the variance to allow the increased depth to width ratio for Lot 3 will significantly impact the new lots and future homes. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from Section 31 to 32F to allow the creation of the pipe stem lot, and staff recommends approval of the variance request from Section 31 to 32 to allow an increased lot depth to width ratio for Lot 3.
Is the applicant here? Like to speak?
I'm Ed Lofton, representing the owners of the property. If there's any questions you have, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
You may want to reserve your time and hear what the opposition has to say, and then you can come back. And
Okay, fine. Fair.
Okay, we have some cards on this item. I'll just take them in order. Robert McHenry.
Members of the commission, I am Bob McHenry. No, we've come with no great pleasure because we like to be good neighbors, but we do have some problems, and I think most of the problems has to do with the ambiguity that we have here today. The petitioners have asked for a variance. They've asked to change and to put 2 new houses. Again, we don't know what type of houses on this property in a relatively small area of an established community off of Range Road. This community has, this small group has a very small dead-end street, which has absolutely, is a very difficult turnaround, a very difficult job in the first place. Second place, and by the way, let me show you where we are, where the McHenrys are, and let me also say before then, we own property at 8100 Henderson Road, Henderson Lane, 8210 Henderson Lane, and 7924 Henderson Road. Also with me today and asked me to speak for him and for his brother is Mike Craig, who is at 8200 Henderson Lane, and his brother George Craig at 8222. Tanya and Jerry Raper live at 7924 in the house that we own that I mentioned earlier. all these people have asked me to address this. And again, our concern is that we really don't know what's going to happen there. We have a 5-acre lot that has a septic tank on it, which has been there, but no one has and no one has told us that that septic tank is appropriate, that it will work. We have 2 other septic tanks or septic type systems that will be placed. We don't know where. There is a lake, a pond, a 3-acre pond called Lake Daly, that is actually owned to some degree on the 3rd lot in this proposed subdivision. We do not know whether any of the drains will get onto our property, which is to the west and the south both of the proposed subdivision. We also note that we have in that area there are numerous 4, 5, 3. There's a 20-acre block that could indeed be subdivided again if indeed this precedent is set. We do not know and cannot know what kind of damage that would do to the water table, what kind of damage that would do to the traffic, what kind of damage that would do to the whole area, and particularly the area concerning, and what our real concern here is the area concerning the waste product. Where is it going? Will it be properly done? No one has come to talk to, at least to the people that we are speaking about today, that I'm speaking for today. No one has said this is what we will do. But what we do know is that a few months ago, there was and continued to be for a great period of time a shooting range that was set up on the back of what is now would be, I think that would be Lake Lot 2, without adequate safeguards. A small burn was put up. Michael Craig, Donna McHenry, and I went to see the people that were out there shooting, and we were told that they had Second Amendment rights that trumped our right, frankly, for quiet enjoyment, and they were going to keep shooting. Now, if this subdivision is set up with the lots as narrow and set back as they are, will that set the shooting range back? Will it be closer to us? We don't know that. No one has told us that. And I don't know that there is I know there is a way to tell us. They can talk to us about it. Will a shooting range continue? It's not zoned for a shooting range. What type of house will be put on the spot? Will it, and I know this is not something you address today, but will it be a house, 2 houses built? Will it be no houses? Will it be a manufactured home? We don't know. Again, there's so much ambiguity. We do not know what will happen and when it will happen. We are concerned because when we ask about the shooting range and ask that be stopped, there are horses in the area, there are animals in the area, there are people, ladies and gentlemen, in the area. And we were concerned about that. And again, the response was, we're going to keep shooting. Now, will that continue? Will the drain of effluent be on our property? Will it come into the lake that is, again, as I said, is on Lot 3? I don't know the answer. And I don't think we have any indication yet that there is an answer to that from these people. So what we have is a situation where we don't know whether one other thing, and I should have pointed out earlier, there is on all the properties on Henderson Road a water line, and the water line was paid for and I suspect, and still being paid for in some instances by, Property Improvement District. Will the folks on this, proposed subdivision buy into it? We don't know the answer to that. Will they drill other wells? Will those wells affect the water table? Will they pay or attempt to pay and get, into the I lost my train of thought. Into the water main that is already there? Again, the ambiguity continues. We don't know those things. So for all those reasons, we ask that the commission reconsider, that the planning board reconsider or consider all of our requests and move this request away and not force us into a situation which would be, we again say, a horrible, absolutely horrible precedent for the whole area and a potential danger to the area. So we are asking if you would to consider not approving this proposal, and at the very least, give us the opportunity to know what it is that these people will do. I think, and the people that I have been asked to talk to you about are concerned about our safety. We feel that the safety of the effluent that may come from the septic systems, from the guns that will be fired, from the traffic problems that will occur, from the precedent that will be set in a quiet, nice area will be changed totally, all without any suggestion from the folks that are trying to set this up to us to tell us what was going on. Thank you very much. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have, but we ask that you turn this down.
Thank you. Donna McHenry.
Will only take a moment of your time, but it is a concern. If you'll look at the plat that they have, what's to my left, I don't know directions, but that's our property. That's where I ride my horses. Right now, what they have told us, they never invited us to come look at how they were set up the shooting, but right now they're shooting across from Lot 3 into Lot 2, which I don't see how they can do once this is going to be so crammed. I don't see how they can do that with 3 houses there. The only way they'll be able to shoot is towards our property, which puts me at great risk and our grandchildren at great risk when we're going to be out riding horses. So it does seem an unfair burden on our piece of property without any more knowledge, because I don't see how this goes. We are all on a well out there, half of the neighborhood. Part of the neighborhood used to be on a well, but they had to change it because there was such a problem with the sewage out there that it was leaking into the water lines. So that's why city water was ran out there at great expense to the neighbors, because there is a sewage problem that already existed. So all of those neighbors went on a water line, and I don't think that that's been brought up. So there are several health issues that we've not seen any approval. We've not seen what you had mentioned, that they had filed something with the health department. But there is a huge safety issue there, and guns is such, we're not trying to take away my Second Amendment right, please. But there's still a safety issue that does have to be taken into account. Thank you.
Heidi Thoreau.
Hello. We live next door to this property, and regardless, I do agree with the safety issues. I have dogs. we also live there. I don't want my animals getting hurt because I don't know where the bullets are coming from. But other than that, I feel that if we start congesting this property, the neighbor's property value will go down. We are living out there. We've lived out there for 11 years. It's quiet. Like one of my other neighbors said about the traffic, there's plenty of traffic now. It's a dead-end street. There's going to be much more traffic and not much construction. We're going to have to live through live store. What kind of burden is that going to put on the neighbor? How much value is going to go down if we start splitting up this property? This neighborhood for me, and their that they had because they wanted to turn another big of, and we will reconsider this. Really feel it will the value. Thank you.
Jeanette Cost. And I'm not sure for it or.
Jeanette speaker wrote on the bottom of it. Speaker, that's what I intended to do. Here. I'm at this for 16 in Sunday school. I spoke also live up front. Block half of our there's children. It's a very nice neighborhood. We bought our we were planning zone of acre and we and nice neighbors. So, man, spoke first, and I come out, I'm going some. I disagree. I appreciate you. You need to speak.
Like to address that brought up.
Quite a few.
For the record.
Again, we did go just pit in, and it's been the health department. The other one looked at his page. No problem. No, it's need to get a approval. Department on its own adjacent neighborhood. I think we're within right distances. What kind of housing out there? The housing has to be a little. For additional housing, don't see a lot of traffic. Maybe don't see it. There's some water. Well, of course, not rooms to be under room to do that. As far as the should there's some conflict between the old folk in here and the others of this. If there's with shooting in the area, the authorities could have. That's, say, is about, there was a lot of, have any you asked that I missed?
Oh, but what time I was gonna,
I don't know. Be what City of Little require arms. And I don't know
If there's something else, then they can have houses, if it's single, be rezoned would process for you to require additional use would be a public review during the site.
I don't, that
800 square feet? Square feet?
insurance on that, we did be sent, like, there's a lot
It's
of
not the same about the type of home.
site plan.
Commissioners?
A little bit of that pertains to the bill of insurance rest of
Addresses like that. It's the only thing required is the siting of the home located any closer to the city, not say home site or construction. Anything like
I have a question. Did, detention study on this land, are you required to? Pardon? Detention? No, not required to that I know of, no. Retention ponds? No.
I have a question of city staff. Shooting ranges have to be sanctioned by other authorities. Is this actually a official sanctioned shooting range?
When I was out there, I didn't see any evidence of a shooting range, or may have been, I didn't see it.
This is in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, so that would all be governed by Pulaski County. Pulaski County does have a code on the books for discharging of firearms that are restricted. You can discharge in the county, but you first have to obtain written permission from the owner of the residence adjacent. Upon his, but he can shoot on his own where he is legally in his possession. Well, it's a section right here. I can read the whole thing. It says, no person shall knowingly fire or discharge a firearm within 1 mile of any residence anywhere in the county without first having obtained the written permission of the owner of the residence to fire such firearm, provided that this section shall not apply to one shooting upon his own land or land which is legally in his possession, nor shall this section apply to one shooting upon the land of another who has given written permission to such shooting. No person shall discharge a firearm over a public road. It would be the sheriff who would have jurisdiction over this matter. Now, if you're talking about the use of a commercial firing range, that is not allowed on this property.
Okay. All right.
Commissioners? Ready for a motion?
Okay. I move for approval of this application as written with staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed?
Does not pass.
I couldn't count from here. What was it?
Right, there were 5 yes, 6 no's, so it fails.
Motion fails. Thank you. Thank you. Item 6. And I would note.
May we leave?
Yes, yes. Item 6, I would once again note that each side has 20 minutes. I would also note that all of you good folks from filled out cards, there's 25 of you and there's only 20 minutes, so be brief or determine when we call on you if you want to speak or not. So with that, I'll ask the applicant.
I'm first.
I'm sorry, read the item first.
Item number 6, file number Z-8503-E, the Point at Brody Creek Phase 2 long form PDR, located in the 3100 to 3300 block of South Bowman Road between Brody Creek and the Point at Brody Creek Apartments. On October 8, 2015, the Commission denied a request to rezone 23 acres of an overall larger tract from R2 to PDR to allow the construction of 400 multifamily units. On September 20th, 2016, the Little Rock Board of Directors denied a request to allow rezoning of the site containing 73 acres, which the 20 acres was included in, from R2 to PDR to allow an overall development plan for the entire acreage. The proposal included the 70-acre tract the developer was proposing to purchase. He has since purchased the property. The plan indicated the northern portion of the site was single-family detached homes. This area contained 27.25 acres. The multifamily development was proposed at 23.45 acres, developed with 408 units. The floodway and open space was proposed containing 11.75 acres, and an area along South Bowman Road was proposed with O1 quiet office district uses. During the review process, the developer made a number of commitments with regard to street construction and street improvements. Those commitments are not a part of the current application request. Section 3683 states no identical or substantially identical application for redistricting can be reviewed within 1 year of the denial. The Board of Directors made their denial on September 20th, 2016, so the applicant does have the right to refile this application. The project is exactly the same development proposed that was previously denied. The development does contain the 70 acres and is proposing to rezone it from R2 to PDR for 408 units of multifamily, future residential housing along the northern boundary, and O1 quiet office district uses along South Bowman Road. The multifamily is proposed in 4 phases. And the request does include a variance from the city's land alteration ordinance to allow grading of the entire site with the development of the first phase of the apartments. The applicant submitted the grading, has stated the grading is necessary to allow the site to balance with regard to cuts and fills. The land use plan shows approximately 57.5 acres of residential medium density on the west side of South Bowman Road and 6.75 acres on the east side of South Bowman Road, north of West 36th Street. There is an area of residential high density, approximately 39 acres along the west side of Bowman Road, north of Colonel Glenn. There are developed and undeveloped residential medium density areas on both sides, east and west of South Bowman, north of West 36th Street, and south of Olds Lane. The area adds up to approximately 64.5 acres. Currently, there are 498 units on the west side of South Bowman Road developed with a residential medium density zoned PDR, and some of the residential medium on the east side is developed with a rehabilitation center zoned as a POD. There are currently 500 units of multifamily approved on the east side of South Bowman Road, of which 420 units have been permitted. This area is indicated as MX on the city's future land use plan. Street improvements to South Bowman Road will be completed as the property with the frontage along South Bowman Road is developed with this current application request. Most of South Bowman Road remains as a 2-lane road with open ditches for drainage from Canis Road to Colonel Glenn Road. Limited improvements have been installed adjacent to the property, which is redeveloped along this stretch. Street improvements have been installed adjacent to the 3 multifamily developments located in the area per the Boundary Street Ordinance. The improvements to South Bowman Road for the development's close proximity to West 36th Street are not to the full master street plan requirements. Staff has reviewed the request, and staff does not support the applicant's request. There have been little to no material definable changes since the Board of Directors initially denied this request.
Thank you. Would the applicant care to come up?
Commissioners. I'm Grant Cox with Quality Grooms, and I'm here to represent the applicant, Richardson Properties. I think Donna did a great job in sort of describing exactly what the plans are, and most of you probably around or aware of the application that was made previously. Tim Daters is here to answer any questions, as well as Ernie Peters with regards to the traffic study that's been submitted to staff. But other than that, I think at this point, we're available to answer any questions and would reserve our time in response.
First card I have, and I just take, these are in the order you turn them in. Dan Veach.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your service. My wife and Ann, we oppose the rezoning, and wrote you a couple letters, so I won't get into that. We and many other residents purchased our homes at Woodlands Edge with the belief that the area would be the area behind our home would be single-family homes and not apartments. And I've also got another concern about the manipulation of our process, the rezoning process, and knowing how tight the Woodlands Edge Board was with Mr. Richardson last year, we were shocked 2 days ago that the board is against it also. First of all, we're real happy, and then we start talking about, well, maybe that's just a little ploy. Maybe, I wonder why they left out the concessions, and maybe he left them out for this go around, and maybe come back in, next year and add the concessions and maybe get the Woodlands Edge Board to agree to it. We don't know, but we don't know what the Woodlands Board, if they're only just after concessions or what. But anyway, the issue is not. The issue is that we don't want the area rezoned for more apartments. We got plenty of them. And so we're not after concessions. So please keep the area residential and let it grow as normally it would according to the city plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I would note for the record, Jennifer McClellan is opposed but chose not to speak. Joanne Roush.
I'm opposed, but I do not want to speak.
Bill Roush.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your time today. I want to speak from about four different points as brief as I can. If you take a look at the maps of Little Rock and look at the different clusters of apartments, I identified 2 or 3. One cluster is Waterford, Bowman Heights, Northwest Hills. That cluster, not far from our area, has a total of all those apartment complexes of 672 units. Another cluster is located down on by the river. It has Brightwaters, Riverwalk, Park at River Cliff, Riverdale, and River Cliff. I don't know the exact count of that, but I can tell you it's not the density that we're looking at here. I used to work with some of the multifamily housing units when I worked with a utility here in town, so I know something about that. We currently have, as was mentioned, about 408 units that are being proposed. Bowman Point, 420, with more to be built. 600, I don't know. Point at Brody Creek has, that was Bowman Point. The point at Brody Creek has 503, and Fontainebleau, not just down the road a piece, is 240. So we're looking at right around 1,200 units. And if we have these additional units go in, I mean, we could be looking at a density of around 2,000 units. Not too far from our nice, quiet residential unit, which, by the way, was built with a nationally recognized, award-winning green space area that we were moved in thinking we would enjoy that for the rest of our lives there. And another issue I want to talk about too is the safety. The Bowman Road out there is, as my dad used to say, crooked as a barrel of snakes, and it winds and turns and is 2 lanes. I don't know when it's going to get improved, but it's rough getting out of there in the morning. And you can take your bowl of Cheerios and sit there and eat them while you're waiting for a place to get in traffic. it's just not a fun place to be in the mornings, and it has progressively gotten denser and more difficult with the traffic. But I want to save the time for my other speakers here, but thank you so much for your time today.
Bill Roush. Oops. Alan Weintraub.
Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, appreciate your time. My name's Alvin Weintraub. I live in Woodlands Edge. I've lived there a little over 7.5 years. I've seen a lot of apartments come in those 7 years. I've been before this commission before trying to stop some of the apartments, once to no avail and once to avail. So, but not to drag up, but Woodlands Edge is just a beautiful scenic area with over 650 homes there. We've got 2 entrances, once going through Brody Creek and once coming out on Canis. And anybody that lives and travels Canis know the problems that we face every day. Potholes, especially after rain, snow, the construction already of the apartments up and down Canis. The infrastructure is not even set up. They say they're going to do it within the next 9 years. Widen Canis Road. Brody Creek is another eyesore. When they build these apartments, they clear cut the land. We can hear Interstate 430 from our house, and we're right in the middle of Woodlands Edge. But I'm sure all of you have driven by Brody Creek and seen that area. And as I mentioned, the Fontainebleau Apartments 240, Bowman Point 217 with a new phase in progress of the 217, Point at Brody Creek 503, the Canis, the new lofts that you all voted in last year, they've got 294. There's like a 3-4 story apartment complex. McKenzie Place is 168. with more additional apartments going to be built on that site. Rowan has 72 apartments, which is right next to the Valero on Canis Road, and McKenzie Place is across the street from the Valero on Canis, if y'all have been out that way. That Chenal Lofts I mentioned is up by the new Kroger, where they built that, by the trampoline place. On Cooper Orbit, that's not mentioned. That's a traffic problem too. And you got the Landmark Apartments, which is 196. All total, you're talking 1,690 units. I'm not saying they're bad built. They're nice built, but when people start building all these other units or wanting to build more units, that means they're vacating older units. And some of these older units are just sitting idle, and then they're going to fall apart. And then you're going to get subsidized housing or government help for those apartments. When Mr. Richardson bought this land, he knew well and good that it was zoned for single-family housing. I went to several of his meetings, and there was a lot of times in those meetings, he said, you want me to buy this land, you don't want somebody else to come in there, and you want me to develop it. Well, I didn't like that attitude at all. He said if he didn't do his apartments, get his apartments, he was going to build over 400 or 500 single family, like Taylor, I don't know, similar family to the Taylor Loop homes, small hamlet, which I'd deal with the houses. The buffer, he was going to do a 25 or a 50-foot buffer. That's out of the question now. Of course, he took, like she said, she took the roundabout that he was going to build. The buffer is out of the question. It's just, I wish you all would have a chance to drive Canis and see the problems that we have getting out of Canis as it is. But I'm not going to take up any more time. I know everybody has a little bit of good and bad to say, but I can tell you from the board standpoint, they are not in favor of this. Okay, thank you.
Pray for me, I drive Canis every day. Mike Bauer.
I just want to go on record as being opposed.
Mike Bauer is opposed. This is a good one. Covington what's the first name?
Lacey.
Ah,
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My husband and I bought our house in Cherry Creek about 12 years ago, and at the time, I'm married to an engineer, so we checked the land use plan, and it was zoned single family, and that's one of the reasons we bought the home, is because we knew that there would be homes comparable to ours built all along the area. And since that time, the Board of Directors has approved 3 rezoning requests, and so this would be the 4th rezoning request in that time period. And we've heard a whole lot of numbers. I've spent a lot of time on a map counting like counting homes and subdivisions. So I just want to take a moment to put that number into perspective. The total number of approved apartments in the Point at Brody Creek, Bowman Point, and Fontainebleau is approximately 1,250. Mr. Richardson is proposing an additional 408 in the second phase of the Point. And that would bring the total in those complexes to 1,658. Having counted all the homes in Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge, there are approximately 725. So that would mean there was nearly 1,000 more apartments in that area than single-family homes in those subdivisions. That's a lot. And if this rezoning request is approved, there is going to be approximately 1,658 apartments in 1 square mile of Bowman. I mean, that's 1,658 apartments in 1 square mile. Traffic along Bowman is not only a concern of city staff, it's definitely a concern of all of our neighborhoods, as you've heard. We applaud the city for its efforts to improve Canis and Bowman, and we welcome those improvements. We drive Canis every day too, and my car needs to be aligned multiple times a year. At the present time, though, there is no clear time frame or funding strategy to make these improvements. And so this is just going to make things worse. If we had a funding system in place and we knew that there was going to be improvements, it may make things better. And I know everybody thinks, well, you're opposed to all, development. You don't want anything, y'all are just complaining and you don't want anything to go to your area. And I don't think that's the case. I think anybody here tonight would agree that we are not opposed to development. But smart development is what we're looking for. I think that we are happy with the ideas of improvements to Bowman and Canis. We want to maintain a balance of housing and keep the character of our area. And then we also, I don't think would be super opposed. Some people may, I won't speak on behalf of everybody, but other housing options, including some condos or some age-restricted housing in the area. But until those improvements are made, we don't need additional apartments and additional traffic. And just as a side note, yesterday as I came home at the entrance at Bowman and Cherry Laurel, there was a fire in the vacant lot across the street, and a fire truck was trying to come through, and we had traffic off in ditches, you had people scattered everywhere. There is no room for emergency vehicles to get up and down if there's any kind of traffic during rush hour. So it's something to consider. Thank you for your time.
thank you. I don't want people not to speak, but I caution you, there's still about 16 cards in 7 minutes, so brevity is a virtue. So if you have something to add to those points, please do. But the next one is Chris and Jennifer Bryan, and/or Jennifer Bryan.
I'll keep this real short. I oppose this on safety reasons. I moved out of the Ridge neighborhood at 8700 block of Cantrell because I detested turning left on Cantrell. Well, I'm never going to complain about that again, because turning left or right at either Brody Creek or Woodlands Edge puts me and my wife and my 7 and 6-year-old at peril. I'm ex-military intelligence, ex-law enforcement. Risk mitigation is just something I always practice. This is a dangerous area. More and more people are cutting through our neighborhood to avoid Bowman and Canis. We called the city on the 24th during the storm. Signs were down, and I said, look, I just have seen 2 near pedestrian deaths at Woodlands Edge Park. And they came out and they looked at it and they said, this needs to be marked. Thank goodness the city rapidly said, we're not taking down signs and trees. We're putting up pedestrian signs. This is not marked. And I just asked just at the park. So Lee Church, I want to commend him. He's one of your employees here. He came out and marked about 4 to 7 pedestrian intersections. And I said, they aren't that bad. He goes, you got a lot of people cutting through. You got a lot of traffic. So just the number of cars going through, people are that's gonna increase a lot if you put those apartments there. So I oppose. Thanks.
Thank you. Ruth Bell.
I'm Ruth Bell. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and the previous speakers have said my talk. It's too dense. It's the carrying capacity of the major roads aren't there. And I do want to remind you all that the successful neighborhoods that have long-term life in our community are ones where there's a ratio between single-family, multifamily, duplexes, office and commercial. And invariably, the favorable ratio is with more single-family than multifamily. So the League would like you to vote no, too.
Chris George.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I want to hear Ms. Shipley speak in particular, but I would just like to make one point on top of what everybody else has been saying, but this proposal, as I mentioned, is a step back even from previous proposals, which we were also opposed to, so I see no reason why this should go any further. And also, this proposal doesn't seem to benefit anybody but Mr. Richardson. We have all our residents in these nice neighborhoods, and there's just no benefit to us. People can say what they want about property values and stuff, but, you know, I've looked at houses before I moved to this neighborhood. I don't want to move somewhere where I'm just surrounded by apartments constantly, and at this point, we've just kind of, that's what we are, and we don't need it any worse. Thank you.
Doug Stewart.
I don't want to take too much time. I'm Doug Stewart. I live in the Brody Creek area, or neighborhood. I'm the vice president of the neighborhood association, and I just want to say I can't add to the numbers and everything else everybody did. It's redundant, but we didn't take a formal poll, but every person in our neighborhood that I've gotten feedback from as an officer of the board is opposed to this rezoning request for the reasons that have already been discussed here.
Clark Cogbill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your service. Again, just to reiterate, there are not only a lot of apartments on Bowman and Canis, there are massive apartment complexes that aren't fully completed right now, not to mention this one. That's the concern, is that the impact is unknown. My son just started driving. He's 16. We've given him a lot of practice. He turned left on Executive Center Drive about a week ago, and he is relatively inexperienced, even though we practiced a lot. But he saw a window to turn left onto Executive Center Drive off of Bowman during rush hour in the morning, and his car skidded and went into the curb because he was pressing it too hard. And I think that's what you're going to see. We're already seeing it. Also, my senior pastor at my church said she didn't consider Woodlands Edge or Brody Creek because of all the apartments. That's an anecdotal example of people who are turning down these neighborhoods. The people are here because we love these neighborhoods. These are great neighborhoods. The city did a wonderful job planning these neighborhoods, and we're concerned. That's why we're here. I'd love to hear Jamie speak.
Russ Rakop. Did I say that right?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Shipley and her speak in opposition.
And Marshall. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let her take my time.
He deferred.
Hi, I'm Jamie Shipley. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to hear from the residents along Bowman and Canis. You've heard a lot of numbers. I just want to put it in perspective. Currently, there are 3,490 apartments within a 3-mile radius of Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge. That's between Canis and Bowman. There is no money currently available for improvement of Bowman Road. Since the last proposal was denied, we've seen a Lowe's go in at the corner of Canis and Bowman. That has created significant damage to Bowman that wasn't taken into consideration previously. And it's also increased the traffic load considerably. So traffic is a concern. You've heard multiple people talk about that. Road improvements, there is no money. The proposal was denied in 2016. Both the Woodlands Edge Board opposes the development this time. We've seen removal of concessions, so this is not a step forward. It's not an act of conciliation. It's frankly an act of war. So that's where we are. We support single-family development. We needed to maintain that current housing balance. If you look at the total number, 3,490, that's more than 12 units per acre for development. So it's all high density. There's no low density apartment complexes within this area. Lacey mentioned quiet office and neighborhood commercial, as did the League of Women Voters. I think you would find that we wouldn't be opposed to that. What we are opposed to is increasing the density and the traffic. We'd like an orderly and comprehensive development plan from Mr. Richardson from all of his property. He actually owns additional property that he can't get to until and unless this land is developed. So what's the plan for that? We're all very concerned. And we'd like the master plan to be updated, taking into account, or the future land use plan, what has already happened and the changes that have already occurred. I think that's incredibly important. And then finally, I'll just end with a couple of statistics from the Federal Reserve. Their home ownership is delayed, not eliminated. This has been a talking point for Mr. Richardson, that millennials don't want to own homes. They want to move into apartments. It's delayed, not eliminated. The increased demand assertions that he has made previously, we don't think are realistic. And based on the Fed rate proposals or estimates for Little Rock actually has more vacancy than any other city within that area. So there, in fact, may be a bubble. The vacancy rate has increased by more than 2% in Little Rock and Memphis. Those are the only two areas that saw an increase in the vacancy rate, not a decrease. Little Rock actually went from 6.3% vacancy to a 7% vacancy in a 3-year period. The office vacancy rate is between 14 and 16% in Little Rock at this time. So we, again, all the residents for all of the neighborhoods, Cherry Creek, Cherrywood, Woodlands Edge, Brody Creek, we would like this to remain as single-family residential. It's in the best interests of the city, and it's in the best interests of the neighbors. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, how many cards do we have?
12 or so.
Could I indulge the chair and request extension of the 20-minute time to 5 more minutes? In addition, 5 minutes on top of that. Is that within the?
Works for me. And Marshall.
Okay.
And Marshall.
Everybody's already said it. I'm opposed to it. I live in Brody Creek. I want to make sure that my grandchildren grow up and not get squashed on the traffic. Please drive about 5 o'clock down Bowman Road, and you'll see why we're so concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Steve Markham.
I think I have much to add, only to the, I'm a Steve Markham, live in Brody Creek, so property owner, and also on the board of Brody Creek. And a lot of discussion about a lot of how much saturation we have in our apartments that are in the density that we have. And I know that you were mentioning, Donna was mentioning about the balance on the opposing side, and there just really isn't any balance. There hasn't been balance in the last 2 construction of apartments that have been going on. And I feel what we have in the plans and what Mr. Richardson's going to plan in this development is really going to put us in an upswing as well. So I know the board truly is opposed to this for Brody Creek, and I'm sure most of us as well. And probably for those that are here, if you're Woodlands or Brody Creek, would you raise your hand? Cherry Creek, Sandpiper. Yeah. you know, so we've all taken, it's all important, we've all taken our days out early to come and discuss this with you. And so this is really an important topic for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer Townsend.
I just oppose this, thank you.
Karen Cowling, is that close?
I'd just like to go on record as opposing it, and I'll waive speaking.
Lee Cowling? Opposed. Now we're talking. Jeannie Thurman.
Opposed, definitely. We're in apartment overload.
Tammy Williams.
She had to go pick up her daughter, but she's definitely opposed.
Paul Easter.
Opposed.
And Carla Easter.
Very much opposed.
Jane Evans.
Opposed.
Paul Keller. Also known as Blue. Good. Thank you very much. Would the applicant care to come back?
Thank you, Commissioners. I don't know that there's that much more to add, but what I will say is I think that on behalf of Mr. Richardson, I would certainly say that we don't think that this is some sort of act of war, and we certainly haven't tried to declare any such by just exercising the right to file an application, and I don't think that that's it. The staff, one thing I will point out, and the staff correctly sort of did say that, you know, what's changed between the last time the application was made and this time. And what I would say there is that in the interim and during the application process last time, there was a moratorium put on any new applications. I'm sure that the commission is aware of that and everything, and it was out there for a year. And at the end of the year, the board heard a study that was prepared for the city that attempted to look into the concerns of a lot of the citizens and the reason that the moratorium was put out there. And what they did in fact find, for the most part, is that multifamily housing like this in general isn't necessarily detrimental to home values and doesn't create, there was a lot of talk of crime or anything like that, doesn't create, you know, increased crime. So that's one difference and one reason that the application was made, but, oh, Sean.
The audience was getting a little loud, and I wanted the applicant to have the ability to present to the commissioners
Well,
his case.
yeah, and that would be the only thing that I would say. One of the reasons that a change that has occurred is that, you know, the city's had the opportunity to study this, and it doesn't seem to that anything came out that necessarily addressed that with regards to the study. I certainly am open to questions from the commissioners if there are any, and as I said, Tim Daters and our repeaters are available as well to address anything with their reports.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner May?
Comment. You better hope I don't vote on your side. I've been on this board 5 years and I've never won one yet. I'm not to vote on your side, so don't blame me if it's there's too many, and they told me it'd get me off the board if I said Reservoir Road one more time.
Commissioner Thomas?
Commissioner Thomas, there's not one resident here in support of this development. I'm very concerned.
Is that it?
Maybe you could communicate with Mr. Richardson, who's not here or present, to be in, I guess, support of his own development and to address the concerns of the property owners here. But why does he want to build? So I just don't understand why he wants to build in a neighborhood that doesn't even want it there. There's, the numbers say that there's over 3,000 apartments that are going to be in a very small area that, I mean, if there's 2 cars per family, I mean, is he going to, maybe he could do the roads for us?
Well, and I certainly,
where's
I'm here
he
on
gonna
behalf
drive?
of, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Richardson, and he does apologize that he couldn't be here. However, one thing I would sort of say to that is that, there aren't any, the comment to there aren't any neighbors. Mr. Richardson is a neighbor to this development. He's got a vested interest in this area and wants to see it develop in a way that he thinks beneficial.
But he thinks.
True, but also, there's been a lot of comments with regards to that, just building. He would not do this and would not file the application if there wasn't a market for this type of development. He's not out there to build apartments that remain vacant. So he has had requests and things like that from people at his properties asking when new apartments will become available.
Well, the apartments are outnumbering the single-family residents, so it's almost like a monopoly.
I don't know how to address that. I don't know that he has a monopoly out there at all.
It kind of looks like it.
Chairman Barry?
Okay.
I got one question for you and 2 for staff. The difference between what was filed before consideration of the board was the application was amended to say that you, the applicant, would do all the street frontage at once, roundabout and such. And now it's off the table. Could you tell me what happened? Was that it's not?
I think probably, and what has occurred, and Tim, I certainly would defer if I'm misspeaking on this, but those sorts of things were done, and Mr. Richardson tried to work with the residents out in that area and tried to work to address concerns. And out of his own, he was trying to do those things, and the board still denied the application. So at this point, he thought, well, I'll just make the application since that's not a requirement.
Okay. I have a question for Public Works. Could you remind me what improvements are online to be done on Canis and any plans for Bowman, just for our context?
Currently, at least a portion of the total construction cost is funded from Shackelford all the way to Gamble. And we're expecting that more money will be allocated, so all that will be built in the next couple years. In fact, I anticipate the first little part of that will soon go to bid this year, and that part will be from Shackelford to Embassy Suites. Right now, there has been a lot of discussion amongst at least some of the board members that more should be done on Canis and more should be done on Bowman. The work that's already been designed is on the books, looking to be done, includes some improvements at Bowman and Canis, which is kind of a critical intersection. And I expect that the board will give serious consideration to allocating additional money to begin a long process of improving Bowman Road on down the road, and including more improvements on Canis. Both Bowman and Canis right now are getting numbers up around 14,000 vehicles a day, both roads. And that's getting at a level of service that everybody notices and is painfully aware of, and certainly something will be done in the future. It's just a little uncertain the timing of when all that money will be available.
Okay. Thank you. And city staff, remind me the history. When it went before the board and the final application, when it was amended, did staff support that application at the time?
Staff supported and the planning commission also supported. It wasn't, it was just like a 7-4 vote from the commission, but staff did support it as well.
And so the difference now is for what, from a staff's disposition standpoint?
There's not been any significant change in the area since the board of directors denied the request.
Okay. Okay.
With that, are we ready for a motion? I'm sorry, Troy.
Mr. Richardson receptive to making a contribution? Big boy out there to kind of help this project along?
Lawyer.
Well, at this point, I don't have.
I think we're falling in an area of negotiating with you, and
We
that's
are.
not
You
the application
certainly
that's on
are.
the table.
We're not gonna do that.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move for the approval of the application as written, except for staff recommendation of denial.
If you are for this proposal, please raise your hand.
Want a second?
I need a second.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, second. Now that it's seconded, if you're in favor of this proposal, raise your hand. All those opposed? Thank you for coming. Thank you for putting up with me. This is my first time to do this, so I apologize for that. And now, we'll give them a little second to clear out, and then it'll be item 7.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, item 7, if staff will read the information.
Item number 7, file number Z-9303, Cigar Republic Short Form PCD, located at 1315 Breckenridge Drive. The request is to rezone the site from C3 General Commercial District to PCD Planned Commercial Development District to convert the existing restaurant into a private club cigar lounge. Cigar Republic is proposing an over 21 smoking establishment, and based on the revenue stream produced from the food service, but also based on the license that he has to obtain from the state, Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, the license is a private club license. The zoning ordinance defines a private club with a dining or bar service, a group of people associated and formally organized for common purpose and interest and pleasure. Facilities include dining and or bar accommodations, none of which are available except to members or to their guests. The separation requirements for the private clubs are based on particulars and should be 750 feet. In this case, the private club is not more than 750 feet from a single family and or an apartment complex which is located to the east. The applicant is proposing to limit the approval of the private club to his sole ownership. The applicant states if the lease is broken or the building is sold, then any future owner would be required to request approval of their use via revision to the approved PCD. The approval of the change in license for the private club would also be required from the state ABC board. The applicant has indicated there are no exterior changes to the building. The applicant indicates that there will be 5 to 6 employees, no loud music playing inside or outside the building, and that the applicant notes that there will be no live music events on the deck or the patio. The applicant knows the hours of operation, 11 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. He notes on weeknights when little customer traffic is at the business, they may close earlier. Although the business will no longer be a full-service restaurant, there will be limited food service available, either in the form of catered food or from a mobile canteen service, which could set up in the parking lot. All mobile canteen operations will operate within the guidelines of the mobile canteen units established by the planning department of the city. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request. Based on the current state law, the applicant is required to seek approval from the local government jurisdiction on any new private club license issued by the state ABC agency. Staff feels since the applicant has limited the approval of the private club to the cigar bar use and to his ownership of the business, this will aid in lessening any potential future impact of the site and the surrounding neighborhoods. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report.
Applicant here. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Miller. Thank you for your time. So Monday night this past week, Ms. Carolyn Evans Stone was able to set up a community-wide meeting with not just the board of her Breckenridge Neighborhood Association, but with 2 other neighborhood associations. We had about 60 people in attendance, and I was given the opportunity to describe more about my business, and I thought the evening went well. I have a short outline I can read that I presented to them. I can read this in about 2 minutes, and then I'll sit down and let the others speak, and I'd like a chance to address them when it's finished, if that's okay. So the first point is that it's for me only. It can't become anything bad later down the road without going through licensing, so she covered that. The second point is, I think the term lounge scares people, but a lounge is simply a public room, as in a hotel or theater or club, in which to sit and relax. So we're talking about a retail environment. I'm opening in the morning so that I can have a retail business. I'm going to have the second, my humidor is going to be 700 square feet. That's 2 to 3 times larger than a typical humidor. I'll have the largest inventory and selection in the state. So I'm counting and needing and wanting a retail business. Most lounges, like Cash would be like the nicest lounge in the city. They open at 4 o'clock. That's a bar. This is a retail establishment. Now, we need to serve drinks to recoup the investment. It'll be about $1 million to buy the building and open up. So we need a liquor license to recoup that. Secondly, I'll just keep reading down through here. So it's going to be a very upscale environment. The average demographic is probably going to be 35 to 60 with incomes of $100,000 or higher. The average drink and cigar is going to be $24 or $12 for a drink, $12 for a cigar. That's $24 plus tax and tips. So one round is going to cost $30. That eliminates a lot of the fear of what kind of crowd might come in. We're talking about people who can afford a DUI financially, but they cannot afford it professionally. So part of our membership is to allow my members to have a complimentary Uber service anytime they request it or anytime we deem that they need it. I'm going to keep moving quickly here. We do plan to attract women with a nice environment. I won't go through all the details of that, but it's not just for men. This will be a nice place. Women represent 20% of the cigar retail business now. Granted, a lot of that is for gifts, but more and more women are smoking cigars. It's just a relaxing hobby. We mentioned already that it's not going to be loud at all. That's not really the attributes of a cigar lounge. It's more calm. This particular location has a lot of natural light, and I plan to have a good crowd in the afternoon with their laptops meeting business clients. Now I want to address the building itself. The building's 47 years old, and it's really in need of a new concept. Bill Criswell of Vesuvio is here tonight, and I've gotten to know him well over the last 10 weeks as I've been trying to negotiate a lease with the owners. The problem with a lease in a building like this is it's a triple net lease, and Bill can speak to this when he comes up, but that would mean I'm on the hook for 50-year-old plumbing, electrical, HVAC. It's a nightmare. So the owners, after about a 7-week lease negotiation, agreed to sell me the building. So I'm going to reinvest in the property. It's conjecture at this point, but it's of my opinion that because the lease is by Vesuvio and El Chico until 2020, that the current owner really has no reason to drop his lease requirements or to improve the building, at least until 2020. So because Vesuvio is already closed, I'm able to make a smooth transition and avoid an empty building for the next year and a half, and then who knows how long it could take after that to possibly lease it. It took 18 months between El Chico and Vesuvio, so I think it's a fair guess that it could be a 3 to 4 year process to get that place released if I don't help with a smooth transition. As far as the exterior, we've already talked about. I don't see any need to change it. The place looks pretty good. We are going to paint the parking lot. We're going to fix the stanchions. We're going to clean up the back a little bit. Bill has 24 employees. I'm going to have 5 or 6, so I think that speaks for itself that it won't have quite as much coming and going with employees. And then my last point I'd like to make after the other speakers speak, and I think is a very important point, which I'd like to save to the end. I would like to say that after I spoke to about 60 people on Monday night, I'm happy to say that the Breckenridge Neighborhood Association did give me their endorsement, and I was very happy to receive that. Thank you, Carolyn. And I do want to work with everybody and be a respectable business in the community, and the tax revenue will be significant. Thanks.
Okay. I've got about 5 cards in opposition. I'm sorry, I got one that's for. Jeremy. Bowen. There you go. Bowen.
I'd just like to say to the commission, my name is Jeremy Bowen. I live in Colony West, right next door to this establishment's proposed location. I would like to say that what we don't need in the area is more vacancies. We need more development in the Rodney Parham area, and I think it would be a mistake to attempt to stifle business innovation in the area. And I believe his concept is quiet and respectful of the neighborhood, and should be allowed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well, while we're in the 4s, Dixon Flake.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name's Dixon Flake, and I represent the current owner of the property. And we're really not involved in your decision because Mr. Miller has said that he wants to buy the property regardless. And that if you denied this zoning, he still has a right, by right, with the existing zoning, just to keep the kitchen, and he can get a mixed drink permit. And that's all he's attempting to do, is to avoid having to have a full menu when he doesn't need it in this case. But either way, he can have the cigar lounge. In one case, it's public. In the other case, it's private. In the case where it's private, you have more controls. These are controls that he submitted to. He doesn't have to be down here. He could be just going ahead and getting his permit and keeping it public and having the kitchen meeting the requirements. So I look at this commission as sort of, rather than the planning commission, you're the common sense commission. And it just makes common sense that if you have more controls and you're not giving up anything that he can do anyway by right now, why not let him do it?
Thank you, sir. Some who are opposed. First is Ms. Piccolo.
Hi, I'm a little nervous, sorry. So my name is Miriam Adamandadis Piccolo. I moved into my house at 32 Bradford 3 years ago with the idea that I would be moving into an area that was inclusive of all peoples, and it would be a good place for family of all demographics. This business proposal is in my neighborhood. I worry that the language used to describe it is exclusive. If it's a smoking establishment, it's going to be excluding families with people under 18. If they're going to be serving alcohol, nobody under 21 can visit it. If it wants to be income-based, which I'm worried about, it's making it very clear that they don't want to serve certain types of people. We know it's very real that there is an income gap between different demographics, between men and women, between people of color, whites, between people that have a higher education and those that have no or very little education. Even those that are working in the public sector and those that work in the private sector know that there's a gap between the incomes. I want to continue living in an area that has businesses that are inclusive, that invites its neighbors to walk through their doors regardless of how much they make, ergo regardless of their gender, of their ethnicity, their education. I'm opposed to excluding people. I really am, so that's why I'm opposed to this business. Thank you. Oh, and smoking is bad for you. Also that. Thank you.
Thank you. David Bolick?
My name is David Bolick, and I'm a real estate broker of 45 years in Little Rock. And my association with this proposal in Colony West Homes is I've been on the board of directors of the Colony West Homeowners Association for the last 10 years. And at that time, 10 years ago, Colony West was not in real good condition because of the fact that the dues were only $100 a year. Being in the real estate business, I know what the average dues were, and at that time it was about $250, $300, a year. And with a pool, a 5-acre park, with 2 acres across the street that could be developed, that's too much to try to operate cutting grass, fixing equipment, operating the pool with employees off of $100 a year with 470 homes. So we developed a 10-year, can you hear me okay? Okay. We developed a 10 to 15-year plan, and we were going to raise the dues from $100 to $200 a year, which they fought tooth and nail when it went from $25 to $30 prior years. And the average number of people that would come to the board meeting would be about 25 or 30 a year. And at this annual meeting, we had about 100 people there. And I had ballots to check yes or no to raise their dues double. And about 80 people filled out no before we started the meeting. After a 3-hour presentation, a PowerPoint showing the vision that we have for Colony West to turn it around, fix it up, and make it more attractive for families and families with children, because we've got large homes in Colony West, probably a larger average per square foot than any other area in western Little Rock that's not over $250,000. In that 10 years, we are comparing ourselves to 5 surrounding subdivisions, and of those, our sales per square foot were in 4th place. Now, 10 years later, we're in 1st place. And the reason is because we spent $300,000 fixing up our park and our neighborhood and the reputation, and we now have a reputation of being a family's neighborhood. And I'm not against the cigar club lounge business, and I'm not against the applicant, but I am opposed or question the location, which is right at the entrance of the Colony West subdivision. At Rodney Parham and Breckenridge, you've got a gas station, you've got McDonald's, you've got the Dunkin' Donuts, and you've got Regions Bank. And you've got 2 big rectangular islands by the gas station and the bank. We own those pieces of land. From our view, that is the entrance right there, because we own that land, we maintain that land, that grass, and we cut it. From that point, when you come in, you got a real nice Vesuvio's restaurant, high-end restaurant. Had good food. I think the only reason that restaurant didn't make it is because Colony West, Breckenridge, Sturbridge, Walnut Valley, Echo Valley is not a high-scale, upscale neighborhood. As a realtor that sells in all areas of the metropolitan area, Cabot, Bryant, Benton, I don't think I've ever seen a home listed in Colony West or surrounding areas that said Colony West upscale neighborhood. And I think the restaurant was definitely upscale, and doesn't mean that people aren't going to drive from other areas to go there. But I have a concern that if this business is being built on upscale, that it's not in the right spot. I would rather think that since the one parcel of land on Rodney Parham where the Kentucky Fried Chicken was, it's a small piece of land. It sold for $1 million, just the land. And I would think that if the Vesuvio property, parking lot and building were somewhere close to Chenal or the Heights, it'd be well in excess of $1 million. I think the motivation is not the demographics. I think it's the cost of the building is inexpensive. And I question whether that's a good reason to have a lounge there. I went to the meeting the other night, and I didn't take a position on the board to all the homeowners, 470 of them. I didn't take a position that I'm for or against. I just stated the facts and the concerns that I had. And I posted the notice to the city on our Facebook page, and I also posted in Next Door Neighbor. And the Next Door Neighbor had a majority of negative comments, but that also includes, approximately 7,000 people surrounding our area. And the Colony West Facebook page was about 70% negative comments. So I decided late, as an afterthought, just to put a poll in there. And I did that about 9 or 10 o'clock this morning, which doesn't give the people a lot of time to respond. But as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, there were, I think it was, there was 30 people against having the lounge in Colony West and 27 for. But that's only 57 people out of 470 people, so they hadn't had much time to respond. On the Next Door, it was 58% against, a little bit wider. One question that was asked at the meeting the other night, they asked the applicant if he had done any demographics. And he said no, that that was impossible to do. That you have no idea where your clients are going to come from. And being in the real estate business, I found that kind of hard to believe. And then on his handout sheet, he's got on here that the demographics are men 35 to 60, income $100,000 a year and higher. So obviously he does have some demographics from somewhere. But the Colony West area, Echo Valley, Walnut Valley, Sturbridge and Breckenridge, Ludington Heights, that is not primarily men 35 to 60 with incomes over $100,000. We are more family oriented. So I'm not as much, like I say, against it as I am what is the benefit for Colony West. When you come into the subdivision, we have a 15-page welcome packet that we give to all homeowners when they purchase a home. And I just can't see us bragging about, and we've got a cigar lounge, because we are a family's subdivision, and the families can't go in there. You're going to eliminate people that don't drink alcohol or can't drink alcohol, and people that don't smoke. So I think that's about my only comments.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Annie Depper? Shedley. And William Greenbaum?
It's Wiley.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please come.
I'm Wiley Greenbaum, and I've been president of Colony West for 16 years. And I get paid nothing, by the way. But I have, honest to goodness, put my heart and soul into our neighborhood, and it means so much to me. We have a big part of our neighborhood that are much older people. And then it kind of sounds bad, but as they're dying off, we're getting a lot of these younger people that have bigger families, which is awesome. We have put so much planning. We have put so much time and effort into making our neighborhood so good. And I just absolutely am 100% opposed to the cigar bar. A couple of years ago, year and a half, it's been almost 2 years ago, my husband and I sold Economy Liquor down on Rodney Parham Road. Well, we still own the land. But, we had cigars down there for years. We had a huge clientele because when you've been there 48 years, people trusted us. And it went completely just, as far as the cigars that we put so much money into, it just fizzled out. You know, that has been 2 years ago. I know times change, a cigar bar is different. But I just don't see it in our neighborhood when they were paying $35 a year, our residents, and just had a stroke over having to pay $200, which we are getting now, but to do these things. But I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, absolutely implore you, please don't. I don't want to see it to be vacant, but on the other hand, I'd almost rather see it vacant than the wrong thing to be there. You know, I'm for some of us women getting out, maybe we could like solicit some really nice family restaurant or something else that maybe the neighborhood, some of the mothers and things might want there. But that's just my little 2 cents worth. Thank you, and I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Would the applicant care to address those?
So my brother and I have a business in Little Rock called Sumotex. We started in 2007 and we sold it in November. And I've been planning this project for about 2 years because we were supposed to sell a lot longer ago than we did. So I've looked at a lot of different locations. The number one complaint with all cigar places is the smoke. So Maduro was downtown near the convention center, and they were successful, and they had a nice little place. But they offered about 20 different, well, they didn't open till late, and they offered about 20 different cigars, and it was mainly a bar. But it was a successful business, and it was popular, and it had no problems from the police or neighborhoods or anything like that. But they went out of business because their smoke was getting up in the rafters and the vents, and they had to close down. West End Cigars right now is experiencing the same problems in Trellis Square. Their smoke's bothering other people. In this industry, the holy grail is to have your own standalone building. And I would hope and expect y'all to appreciate that I'm buying the property because it's got its own private parking lot. It's its own standalone building. The smoke's not going to affect anybody. But I've looked at a lot of different places, and the leases that this city is asking for is like a major city lease. And this was a good opportunity. Sure, I'm a businessman. This is a good opportunity. But it's also one of the few standalone buildings that's under $1 million for sale in the city. And it's going to be a fun, nice, upscale place. The last thing I'll say, Mr. Dixon kind of stole my thunder, which is I can open. I've checked with all the different departments, and from what I understand, I can keep the restaurant and I can open. It just doesn't seem like that's the best use to have 1/3 of my square foot being a restaurant and nobody really wants to eat in my place. If I'm able to get the private club zoning, I'm planning to put on 2 indoor golf simulators in the back. So that's going to bring in golfers, and I don't think golfers are going to pose much of a problem to the residents of Colony West. The majority of the questions that were asked of me at this meeting on Monday with about 60 people in attendance were all in how can I make sure that the environment is what I say it's going to be. And as Mr. Dixon pointed out, private club lets me do that. As far as it being exclusionary, it's not exclusionary. People are just going to choose if they want to be a member or not. The only way I would deny membership is if a member was too loud or drinking too much and causing a problem. That's how I'm going to exclude them. It's pretty simple. I know for a fact that common sense would say that I can run a private club and keep my standards higher than I could if I was open for a restaurant. I don't want to go there. I don't want to threaten them, hey, I'm going to open anyway. I've never made that a point. But it's a fair point to be made. A private club gives me the tools to do that. And I assure everybody here it's going to be a nice, upscale place. Thank you for all your considerations, and thank you, Jamie, and your staff for recommending me and doing the due diligence. Jamie was at the meeting the other night. And again, thank you to Carolyn, who was the board at Breckenridge Neighborhood Association. And I'm happy to have their support, and I hope I have yours. Thank you. I can answer questions.
Any commissioners? Commissioner Hamilton?
Yeah, just one question. I think you have addressed it, but I think it's important people here, as a private club, are there any membership requirements that you will have?
So the humidor is the main business we're in, and that is open to the public 100%. I need the public to buy cigars there. I shop at Cigars International. It's an online place, and this is a brief story but important. An order was backed up last year, and I called and said, "What's the problem?" And they said, "Well, we switched our computer systems over, and we're backed up." I said, "Well, how much could you be backed up?" They said, "Well, we do 20,000 orders a day." That's not cigars, that's orders. So there's a lot of people buying cigars. So retail locally would add a lot to someone not having to buy online, and they skip the sales tax. But as far as the bar and lounge being exclusionary or requirements, if you want to sit down and have a drink, you have to have a membership card. So the chairs are $1,000. My furniture budget, y'all, is $56,000. So I have to have some way to recoup that. And so there needs to be some cost to be able to enjoy that environment. Right now, I'm a smoker, and I go to Cash every afternoon. That's pretty much my only place to go. So we're just giving somebody a different opportunity. So to clarify, the lounge is open to anybody that buys a cigar, but if you want to drink, you have to be a member. Does that answer your question?
But it raises
Have you determined the cost of membership by chance?
I'm going to have lockers. Lockers are very popular in my business, where you can keep your own cigars and you can bring a client and share your cigars. And it's just part of our industry. And so the lockers are going to be $100 a month. There's going to be 60 lockers. And so the majority of my membership revenue will come from that. There will be a base membership, and I was asked that on multiple occasions the other night. And if I could tell a story, because I think it's applicable, there was two city council members at the meeting on Monday night. I keep referencing that because we had 60 people. And by the way, I think it's pretty amazing that the vote today was about 50-50, considering that most votes are like the last one, which is 100% against. So that should speak something. But at this meeting, after it was over, one of the city council members and I had a chance to speak, and that council member's concern was that if my demographics are 35 to 60, then why don't I raise my membership age requirement? And I thought that was a little comical. That would be very exclusionary. And then the next question that council member asked me was, "Well, I don't think your membership fees are high enough." And I said, "Well, it sounds like that you support me being able to control my environment, so can I count on your support for the private club designation?" And this person said, "Oh, no, I'm not saying that." So I think it's obvious that I can control the environment better with a private club, and that's all I'm asking to do.
Which prompts a question, while you're still on that subject.
Yes, sir.
If I want to come in and buy a retail cigar, do I go into
100%.
the
We
club?
want your business. You walk right in, and there's a private party room now in Vesuvio. It's about 700 square feet. I'm going to turn that into the humidor. It's open to public, 100%.
So I'm not in the private club part yet.
Well, the private club is just to be able to drink. If you want to have a drink, I've got to know who you are and membership. But it is a retail establishment, and this is very common in cigar retail business. There's a company called Monte Cristo who owns JR's. I'm not sure if everybody's heard of this. So Monte Cristo bought JR's about 2 years ago, and they've transformed 5 JR's, and they've opened up 8 more. There's 12.
My question is, if it's a private club, it's private.
It was my understanding from the ABC that a private club does not have to check membership at the door, only when they order a drink. And the majority of cigar lounges will sell cigars to the public, and I hope to do that.
Well, I know you're probably selling the public. It just strikes me you're a private club, but you're letting the public, anybody from the public can
We want the public there.
wheel up, run in, buy $20 worth of cigars or whatever.
Yes, sir. We encourage that.
Okay.
That's a big part of the business. That's why we're open in the morning and not just bar hours.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Comments? Questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of this application with staff recommendations.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the project, raise your hand.
Thank you.
All those opposed? The motion passes. Item 11.
Before we leave from this, can she ask that question that I had mentioned?
That's for citizen communications at the very end. She can wait after this other.
We got one more after
We
this.
got one more item.
She's right after this item.
We got one more item to go. It'll be at the end of the meeting.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, hold on.
Not yet.
Yes,
Hold it. You want to speak about the trailers? And the,
yes.
yeah, that's at the end of this meeting. We're not.
You're almost there.
You're almost there.
Okay, sit down.
Sit down.
Bingo.
I didn't want to say that, but okay. Okay.
Item 11.
Item 11, file number LA 0078. This is the Geyer Springs Road and Mableville Cutoff Road Tree Harvest Variance request. Our site is located south of, in the southern part of Geyer Springs Road, south of the Mableville Cutoff. The applicant's Ridgeway Timber Corporation, represented by Benton Gann, with the Southern Forestry and Wildlife LLC Company. This applicant today is requesting a variance to harvest timber on about 37% of the timber located on approximately 253 acres, located on both the east and west sides of Geyer Springs Road, just south of Mableville Cutoff and Rinky Road. The variance would allow staff to issue a grading permit for harvesting timber without it being eminent to develop or otherwise construct on the property. The current property is zoned R2, and it's covered in a dense forest vegetation in a relatively low-lying area. West of the property are several residential subdivisions zoned R2, which consist of Capitol Place, Yorkwood, Littleton, and several other unplatted small properties. South of the property are undeveloped properties that are within and outside of the current city limits, along an old abandoned railroad right-of-way and the Little Fish Creek. North of the subject property and west of Geyer Springs Road is Mableville Cutoff, and north of the subject property and east of Geyer Springs is Rinky Road. East of the property are moderate to large undeveloped properties, all zoned R2. The applicant is proposing to harvest timber in accordance with a prepared timber harvest plan. Currently, the site's a mix of pine and hardwood trees, and it has marketable timber on the property. This plan identifies 37% of the timber is to be harvested. Select timber will be felled, skidded to several central locations, delimbed by mechanical equipment, and delivered to the mill. It's also planned that to prevent a fire hazard, the limbs and brush to keep them from becoming a future fire hazard will be burned with the permission of the fire department and the proper permits for that. They propose protecting streams through proper stream management zones, meaning they'll stay away from streams and flag those. The plan identifies a 50-foot undisturbed buffer to these stream areas. The zones are expected to be approximately 70 feet in width, and the plan states that 50-foot undisturbed buffers will remain adjacent to exterior property lines, and 80-foot undisturbed buffers will remain adjacent to Geyer Springs Road, Mableville Cutoff, except at those points that provide access for equipment. The harvest plan shows that 4 locations will be used as access to the property, and a temporary access culvert is to be placed there, properly sized by an engineer, a suitable tracking pad to keep mud off the streets, and the usual things you would see at a construction site. Staff recommends approval of the timber harvest variance plan, subject to the compliance with the staff's recommendations and comments found in paragraph D, along with the following comments and conditions. The undisturbed buffers of 50 and 80 feet in width should be marked on site with paint or flagging. A grading permit must be obtained prior to the start of harvest. Mud and debris tracked on Geyer Springs Road will be removed immediately. Temporary culvert pipes used to access to the property will be sized by a licensed engineer and removed at completion of the project at those locations and not become permanent access. Any damage occurs to adjacent streets attributed to timber hauling will be repaired immediately. Gates and cables should be installed at access points at the completion of the harvest to prevent dumping and public access. Contact the Little Rock Fire Department about burning of all tree tops and debris generated from the project. All site work will only be conducted at times allowed for work by city ordinance. And that concludes the presentation.
Would the applicant like to speak?
Thank you. My name is Benton Gann, and basically what we want to do, we just want to thin the timber, get it to the market, and that's it. And something else that was brought to my attention today is that there was a possible cemetery east of Gyre Springs Road, and so we would like to amend our application to search out and determine if there's actually a cemetery on the property, and if there is, we'll put a 50-foot buffer around there, and
That was, he read it in, so that's acceptable.
Okay. Anything else?
that's it.
We have one card in opposition, Director B.J. Wyrick. Welcome.
For the record, I wasn't the person that was at the cigar bar that was mentioned earlier. Wasn't me. I am B.J. Wyrick, and I represent Ward 7 in Southwest Little Rock on the Little Rock City Council. I have two concerns about this property. One of them is we're removing 37% of the timber, and there's no plan. So we're going to deforest that 253 acres. The other concern I have is today we have a drainage problem or a water buildup problem on the Little Fish Creek that runs behind a couple of neighborhoods, Yorkwood for one. And it actually has gotten in and flooded some homes. And I'm concerned about the work that they're going to do, and that it might stop up, create more additional problems for the drainage through there. And I would like some assurances that that's not going to happen. The other thing is, a number of years ago, there were some trees that had fallen into that creek that went through this property. And they were cleaned out, and it relieved some issues with the drainage. So I'm hopeful that if they go through there and they see trees in the existing creek that runs through there, that they're able to pull those out. But the tops of the trees, you know, anything that would eliminate the flow of the creek through there is of concern to me. That's it.
Would the applicant like to address those?
The first point she had was deforestation. We're only removing 37% of the standing timber that's there, so there's going to be 63% left. That's more than half. And then on the SMZ part that was red, that's a buffer zone around the creek. And so there's not going to be any timber harvest that falls in there other than what we have talked to in the previous board meeting about whenever there's a tree or something blocking the drainage of the creek. So we'll go in there with the skidder, remove the top or tree, whatever's blocking the creek, and allow for better drainage. And so that was the only two issues that I picked up, and if the board has any questions.
Okay. Commissioner May?
Why does he have to have permission to cut these trees when they go out and clear cut Bowman Road by 500 acres?
I'd like to address that, please. The land alteration ordinance is pretty specific about restricting but not eliminating the clear cutting, the harvesting of trees within the city limits. Now, many of these development plans you see and vote on every day have in them, you know, some kind of condition to allow variance, to allow grading of an entire site with the first phase of the development, say. So these kind of requests can be approved, but not at a staff level. It goes at a planning commission level. And this is very similar to that. It's R2 zone property and it's quite large. It falls under none of the standard exemptions that staff may be able to act on this. So the planning commission is required to approve this type of variance from the standard requirements of the land alteration ordinance. Did that help?
Yep, stay up there, Mike. I had just one question. It is a little bit of education for us, since we're seeing more of these timber harvesting requests in the city. And the current land alteration ordinance, the standard is what percent that you can do without going before?
We say that you cannot clear cut and that we will not approve a total clear cut or complete harvest of the property.
Right.
It's rather vague that way. We do have also standard requirements about maintaining buffers around the property so you're not right up against neighbors cutting trees down, not right up against the streets cutting all the vegetation down with no development plan in sight for the immediate future. So in essence, you could never cut everything down under that ordinance, we encourage in the ordinance that it be done under a timber harvest plan prepared by the proper professionals that do that work, and that has been complied with.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Anybody else? Roy? Mr. Leahy?
Well, I'm kind of disappointed in this young surveyor out there that he didn't find that cemetery, and a forester should have found it as he went over the area trying to evaluate the timber. And the surveyor did not show the right-of-way of the three principal streets out there, Rinky Road, Guy Springs, and Maysville Cutoff. How you gonna know whether a 70-foot buffer back or whether existing right-of-way is if somebody don't measure it, don't tell you where it is? Now, if you cut in the right-of-way, what's going to be the penalty? I know some places out there that they have cut in the right-of-way. And it always brings up what the penalty is. What if you cut into these buffer zones? What's going to be the penalty? And I think the man should be told what the penalty is and what they're going to, how they're going to enforce that. And I'll stop there. I got a whole lot more questions, but also for your information, I grow pine trees.
Yes, Commissioner. Of course, they are to maintain a buffer on the site, and then that buffer is from property lines, not from right-of-way lines. You and I both know that probably it's 50 feet out that way where it's an undeveloped area that's never been through a planning process other than R2 zoning. The penalties in the ordinance is the ultimate penalty after a stop work order and administrative actions is a citation, and this is a matter that can be taken by our code enforcement officer. We have one certified officer on staff and taken to environmental court for enforcement there. But at that point, it'd be up to a judge for those penalties.
Doesn't that ordinance also say that he has to replace those trees he did not have permission to cut on many
Yes,
sections?
sir. There is also a procedure where they have to restore the site for indiscriminate clearing. Certainly, we try to handle that through administrative actions where possible, and otherwise, we've got the court option, and there's even a provision that the restoration plan would come here to the commission.
That's all.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of this application as written with staff recommendations.
Is there a second? Second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the project, raise your hand. Those opposed? It's approved. Have a good day.
All right.
And now, this nice lady's been waiting so patiently.
My name is Maxine Yarbrough, and I live in Colony West. For 46 years ago, I bought my home. I have noticed a slight problem that we have, and it continues to increase, and that is these people permanently parking their RVs, their house trailers, their whatever that y'all call those things. And I contacted my board and complained to them about this, and they said that there was nothing to do about, that they could do about it because the city has no ordinance against this. And I realize that I'm breaking protocol here, but I would like to appeal to you to please consider passing an ordinance of some kind that prevents people from permanently parking these awful vehicles in their driveways. It destroys the look of the neighborhood.
Defer to staff on that, but she has a good point.
The City of Little Rock has no law that prohibits an individual from parking their RV or camper on a properly paved portion of their yard. We do regulate the parking of vehicles such as that in the public right-of-way for a time extended over 24 hours. You're not allowed to do that. The city has looked at this numerous times over the years and has chosen not to prohibit individuals from parking their private RVs and campers on the properly paved portions of their yard, and that's anywhere in the city.
Was your grievance for RVs on the public street parked or on the yard? I must have missed that.
Yeah, y'all did pass an ordinance several years ago that you cannot park such a vehicle on the grass in your yard, or you cannot park a vehicle on the grass in your yard. And I've been told, and it's my understanding, that the way that some people get by this is that they will actually take a concrete block and put their vehicle on top of the block. And so therefore, if you're going to push comes to pull, you can say, well, it's not parked on the grass. Now, I understand that the city passed this ordinance, as I said, a couple of years ago. In fact, the mayor, I remember reading in the newspaper, the mayor was definitely in favor of this, and which is, to me, is absurd. I can't imagine anybody being that small-minded. But my problem is when I leave my home and I drive down the street, and so-and-so's got this thing and parked in his driveway, and so-and-so, what's that do to my property value? It looks like a trailer park, and I have nothing against trailer parks. If I wanted to live in one, I would. I don't want to live in one.
Chair, if I may suggest to the speaker that, Mr. Carney explained, the ordinance as they stand now.
Right.
And speaking with your director of your ward, which is Director Peck, with regard to that matter, would be greatly encouraged. Also, everything that you spoke about is something that could also be handled within your own property owner association, or if it's in your, well, y'all are well within your right within your association to add your bylaws and amend it, but it has to be approved through whatever your approval process, through your bill of assurance and through everybody that's there. So in other words, if somebody is already living there, to get that enacted, you might have to, I don't know what your bylaws are, your assurance, but I would go back to your board of your association and see what you can implement. Because y'all that can be a little more restrictive than our ordinance, but we would not regulate that. Y'all would regulate that, and there needs to be an enforcement value upon that. So in other words, if you choose to do that in your bylaws or your bill of assurance, and it needs to be enforced, we don't go enforce that. We only enforce ordinance. It'd be something that the board would, y'all could do, but there has to be some way to enforce that. There's other neighborhoods in the city of Little Rock that has those types of bill of assurances on there that you could use as an example to set that up. So what you're asking can be done by yourselves if you choose to do so.
I did not know that. Thank you so much, because I honestly did not know that, and we've not had an attorney tell us that.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but
Yeah, but I'm gonna take your word for it.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other business to come before us? I appreciate everybody putting up with me yet again. I appreciate it. Any other business? Hearing none, we're adjourned. After a motion to adjourn.